Tristan da Silva will be one of the best role players in the 2024 NBA draft. This is floor and ceiling. Let's break him down. Being a successful complementary piece in the NBA usually starts with being able to shoot the three, so let's start there with da Silva. The Colorado wing made nearly 40% of his threes this past season, shooting a career high in attempts per game at almost 5 and in efficiency. Even more impressively, da Silva is someone who profiles really well as a catch-and-shoot option from downtown. The German wing shot 145 spot-up shots this year, making more than 41% of them. Da Silva is going to be able to play around other stars, and I think he'll be able to score on a lower diet of touches. Da Silva stands a little bit over 6'9" in shoes, which gives him really nice size as a shooting accessory. I've seen some comparisons to Cam Johnson, but I liked Cam more coming out of Carolina, to be honest. So looking at this past NBA season, I'm thinking a role similar to Simone Fontecchio's makes sense for da Silva down the line. Regardless, that idea is going to be centered around spacing the floor and then making decisions from there, which da Silva has proven that he can do. I like his versatility from deep. The 23-year-old is a fluid, quick shooter who can lift or fade into threes. Da Silva is not necessarily sprinting into movement threes, but he sets his feet and he organizes himself into a shot quickly when he does move to the ball. That size, which I mentioned earlier, definitely helps, and given all of this, it's tough to dispute the numbers or the eye test. In terms of scoring, self-creation off the dribble is da Silva's biggest limitation. This is particularly apparent from 3, as that near 42% on catch and shoots dwindles to 21% off the bounce. This does not necessarily have to be an issue. After all, I'm not drafting da Silva with the goal of putting the ball in his hands. Even then, it's not like he's useless. We'll dive into his decision making in a bit, but da Silva can use a ball screen or a handoff to get into his pull-up. However, it's just that I don't really see that being his bread and butter in the NBA. So overall, I'm speaking to greater ideas about roster construction or rookie maturity. Da Silva's ceiling is probably lower than many other first-round prospects, but his outcome is pretty safe, scalable, and he should be ready to contribute in theory to an NBA team pretty quickly. Personally, he's right outside the top 20 of my big board. I prefer more potential, but I could definitely understand the Sixers, Lakers, Magic, Cavs, Suns, or Bucks all picking him within that range. I'm confident that da Silva is going to be able to shoot the three, so let's get into his decisions off the catch. More than ever, and this is something that I've really been stressing as of late, I think that prospects need to be able to make quick decisions. More often than not, this is directly linked to having shooting gravity as well, so da Silva's total package is definitely encouraging. He knows how to attack a closeout, and at his size, he's a decent, smooth athlete. Da Silva is not super explosive, but he does operate with good body control, some pop, and very real fluidity. Reliable, I think, is a good descriptor because da Silva should be an easy plug-and-play fit at the next level. He doesn't and will not require many touches to be effective, and he's decisive getting downhill, usually not needing more than 2 or 3 dribbles once he actually attacks. Da Silva finished about 63% of his total shots at the rim, a figure that encouragingly stays around the same in the half court. So, whether he's initiating the drive himself or attacking off the catch, the process and results end up looking pretty similar, and you can imagine a lot of this translating to the NBA. At the same time, I do have some concerns about da Silva's finishing. I'm just not convinced that he completely meets all of the athletic thresholds that I look for in NBA wings. Broadly speaking, the Colorado prospect is a big, solid athlete, but I think he lacks power. Almost everything is always more fluid or smooth than it is explosive or physical. Da Silva is a little over 6'9" in shoes, yet I still don't have that much confidence in him finishing over NBA bigs regularly, at least at first. His handle was functional in college. It's not bad or anything. In the NBA, he should be able to put the ball on the floor for a couple of dribbles, but Da Silva is not very creative or shaky. He's not that elastic either, not getting very low to the ground, and once he gets into the NBA, beating wings off the dribble is going to be a lot tougher. On top of that, if he doesn't improve his physicality, then teams can stash smaller defenders on him, which is not ideal. At this juncture, I consider Da Silva to be much more of a 3 than a 4, but I wish he had that optionality even if it is somewhat contextual. All of this ties into why I prefer the Colorado prospect as a scorer off the ball for the most part. As I mentioned, Da Silva had the ball a lot recently with the Buffs, but I think NBA teams should get more from his cutting, rolling, and hopefully rebounding. Despite some of my concerns about his finishing improvements, the numbers are ultimately solid, and Da Silva showed as much against set defenses as well. In his senior season, 56% of his shots at the basket were assisted, and while I'm hoping that number goes up in the NBA alongside an increase in conversion, the truth is Da Silva's percentage of assisted makes has always remained around the same. The German wing has the size and touch to be an effective cutter. He understands how to space the floor well and then dive into open crevices. Right now, I think Da Silva finds it easier to finish on the move because he doesn't necessarily have a defender directly in front of him. As a result, the catch becomes that if you play him too tight, he can cut, but if you give Da Silva too much space, he can punish you with his 3. Looking ahead, it would be interesting to see Da Silva used more as a screener in the pick and roll. He barely got these reps as a senior, but I think he has the means to be a dangerous pick and pop shooter. Along with that, I think Da Silva likely has the means to develop into more of a roller, even if he might just slip the screen most of the time. All of this also returns to the concept of how being able to truly play the 4 would further boost Da Silva's stock, and in general, this is about his physicality and strength. Whenever I watch him, I just feel like Da Silva does not get that much out of his size in certain situations where he could better leverage it. For example, on the glass, Da Silva averaged 5 rebounds per game, which is solid, but his motor, physicality, or tenacity on the boards just were not really takeaways for me. That's not to say they're bad, they're not, but they're just not remarkable, I think. We'll also be looking at some post-ups here, but Da Silva playing with his back to the basket isn't really what I'm focusing on. The results were mixed, more or less. However, it's more about whether Da Silva will be able to punish smaller defenders on a regular basis. In the NBA nowadays, you really need to play strong, and the idea with the Colorado wing is that he can contribute relatively quickly while being matched up against other wings. If Da Silva struggles from a physicality perspective, that becomes less of an option in the short term, and I also think he becomes less interesting to those teams who have short-term championship aspirations. Getting into his playmaking, what I like the most about Da Silva is how quickly and accurately he makes decisions. Importantly, these assists or good passes came in a variety of contexts, which shows to me that he reads the game well overall, rather than if he's only put into certain situations. Da Silva might not necessarily do anything crazy creative, but he does know how to attack a shifting defense without killing the flow of the ball. Overall, he's very dependable. The Colorado prospect can find the open man in transition, he can do so attacking closeouts, and he's also pretty adept at finding cutters or shooters from above the break. Da Silva's best reads are snappy, and I very much prefer them when they're kept that way. Sure, that might not be an amazing ceiling as a playmaker, but I think there's real value in knowing when and how to move the ball smartly. As I just said, his passes came in multiple settings. So one thing we saw here and there at Colorado was the German wing running the pick and roll. Broadly speaking, he did this well at the college level, and that checks out on the court and in the more advanced stats. However, I feel like Da Silva was generally making pretty safe decisions and understanding defensive breakdowns rather than causing those breakdowns himself. That's alright, but it is important to highlight because I don't really expect these pick and roll reps to be common in the NBA. He might get a screen once in a while to score, or in a late shot clock or something like that, but I'm confident that Da Silva's passing is most effective when it's quick off the catch or off a rebound, rather than when the German wing accumulates a lot of touches. When that does happen, I feel like Da Silva can be plodding, and like I've been saying, his handle is good when kept to a few touches, but not that dynamic otherwise. This doesn't necessarily have to be a limitation, it can be something contextual that needs to be factored in. After all, Da Silva does not turn the ball over really, and he's a pretty safe decision maker and passer, but we should also be aware that he's not some sort of do-it-all prospect who can dribble, pass, and shoot to the full extent. Da Silva is well-rounded, so he can do all of these things to different degrees, but they all have important limitations or improvement points, which probably, quote-unquote, confines him to being a pretty good role player. I'm a little less sure about Tristan da Silva's defense than his offensive skill set, but I acknowledge that he will probably be okay enough in the long run. I won't take too much time on this because the explanation and the outlook is pretty straightforward without needing to be complicated. Overall, Da Silva profiles okay as a defender. He was very solid, even decent at the college level. The Colorado wing moves pretty well for his size, which is what also gives him greater margin for recovery, and I thought this really showed up when I rewatched the tape. Da Silva's lateral quickness is not mind-blowing, but I think it's fine enough. He can slide a little in space, he can use his length to cover up ground with long strides, and he can use his physical tools, even though I do find his foot speed much less convincing in space against quicker guards. Still, Da Silva moves pretty well around the floor, and he can then use his length and mobility to contest or even block shots. Looking ahead, I'm expecting him to be passable in the NBA, but he should likely go down a level or so compared to college. Sure, he won't carry as big of an offensive load, which could open up the room for more defensive activity, but I think Da Silva is only an average athlete on this side of the ball, particularly when it comes to strength. The German wing averaged a bit over 1 steal and 1/2 a block per game, which was fine in college, but he is 23 after many years in the NCAA. I'm not expecting fireworks from Da Silva in the NBA, and I'm also not sure about how switchy he can really be given some of his limitations, but there is value in being a dependable positional defender. Da Silva's pop and physicality in particular leave me wanting more. His first jump and reaction time can be kinda slow, and I just don't see him adding value as a rim protector. So again, Da Silva will be solid on defense, as has been the case until now, but there are certain limitations that need to be accounted for when projecting his NBA outcome. I expect Tristan da Silva to return first round value as a very valuable role player who should be able to shoot the three, make decisions off the catch with some passing, and also hold his own on defense while remaining steady. Ultimately though, I see the Colorado man right around my top 20 through 25 rather than that 15 through 20 range. That is because of Da Silva's limited self-creation, improvable physicality on both ends, and despite what looks like a very safe floor, he does have an overall lower ceiling. As always, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like, Make sure to leave a comment telling me what you think of Tristan da Silva. And if you enjoy the channel, if you want to watch more content like this, make sure to subscribe. Take care, and I'll catch you guys next time.